and we're not talking about it. Stay tuned. Welcome, everybody. This is Books Cafe, sponsored by free-ebooks.net. I'm your host, Scott Paton. Joining us is our other host, Chaffee-Thanh Nguyen. How you doing, Chaffee?
Rocking and rolling, Scott.
Awesome. All right. So this past weekend, it was the Oscars, and everybody knows what happened at the Oscars. We're not going to give it any more publicity, except to say, what do you do when you want to get some publicity? Because as an author, and we're really going to be focusing on authors for the next little while, folks. So, but as an author, how can you get the word out about your book? And to me, the answer is piggybacking on things that are happening in the world. So when something happens that shocks everybody, and whether you think it really, was fake, if they planned it or whatever, it doesn't matter, because the way that it looked in the ratings was down, 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 down. The slap heard around the world happened, and it went up, 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 up. What the slappee, the person that got slapped, had more tickets sold to his tour in one day than he had in the previous month. And the slapper, I believe, and I could have this wrong, his movie was streamed more times in the next 24 hours after the slap heard around the world than it had been in the previous month. So whether you thought it was contrived or maybe that's wrong, but
I was going to say, and don't forget to mention the other conspiracy theory out there, Scott, which is the slapper's wife's disease. Actually, the company that is sponsoring the Oscars has a third trial or trial 3 patent on that medication for that disease. So that got viewership or visibility.
Everyone who didn't know how you lose your hair with a disease, not me, I don't have it, but
and that disease was
right.
the number one search term on Google for a while.
Right. So what you have is you have people that have a lot of reach. Everybody watches. And then you have another group of people that says, well, we have this drug, this person is involved, right? So, I mean, he could have told a joke about anybody's wife, but he picked that one, and it all fits. So whether it's conspiracy theory, whether it's backstage, whatever, the fact of the matter is when these people put this together, it causes a huge amount of hype. So my question to you, Chaffee, today is, how could an author take advantage? So let's brainstorm. We want to brainstorm a little bit. Okay. You've got your children's books. I've got a book on lessons I learned from my dad. You wrote, you didn't write it. I wrote my chapter, but how the books came about are totally different. They're totally different topics, but how could we, and this is for authors, right? Like, you've got a book. It could be a sci-fi book. It could be a nonfiction business book or travel book. How can we tie in with now? Yeah. How can we tie in with? Now, I have to tell you that on Facebook, there's a little section that is videos. And I have made the mistake of tapping on that button. And then there's these videos that I don't know how Facebook decides that I would like to watch those videos or not. But there's one guy, and I forget his name now, but he is a parody of a sensei, a martial arts teacher, right? A Meridote is what it's called, and I forget his name. But anyway, so he has these like 2-minute little videos, and what happens is normally he'll have someone who's a real ninja, and a real sensei, a real teacher, and they will show you some art. If someone's coming at you with a knife or someone's attacking you from behind, how they use their discipline to get out of the problem. And then he'll come on and tell you why it's all BS and everything. And then he just makes this big joke about the whole thing, right? It's very funny. He gets millions of views and all the rest of it. So to my non-surprise, he has a video up the next day on what to do when someone comes up to slap you in the face. And I thought, oh my goodness, like he was right on it, right? Like he saw this, saw the opportunity. Millions and millions of people saw it and said, wow, and did nothing. He saw it, went, wow, and how can I take advantage of this? And that's what he did. So that's what I want to talk about, is because even though this happened on the weekend, next weekend is going to be something else. The following weekend is going to be something. There's always something. Now, some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's
By the way,
hilarious.
Scott, can I just mention, and this is politics aside and everything else aside, what a travesty it is that all 15 news networks, or over 15 news networks, reported on this slap versus all the other stuff that's going on in the world. That's, just an aside. I just wanted to say that it's like there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that a lot of these news networks aren't covering, and they cover the slap. So
Yep. Well,
anyways,
that's
let's move
the
on.
society that we're in, right? So we want to take advantage of it. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes and give you the floor.
Yeah. So what I hear what you're saying is that if you want publicity for your book, if you want people to read your book, then you need to go around and smack everybody and say, read my book. Right?
That's not what I'm saying at all.
That's exactly what you just said. You need to go slap people and say, read my book.
No. How do you, like my example with the Meridoti guy, right? He's showing you how to protect yourself from the slap. And I know I'm not on the screen, but you have the floor. So
my goodness.
So now how do you tie in? Because I think this is an art. And if you're an author, you're an artist, right? So, but if you don't think about it, you don't practice it, then you miss the opportunity. So there's basically 3 million artists, dancers, singers, comedians probably haven't missed the boat at all. They'll be talking about this for a long time. But a lot of other people that they could have tied it in, clickbait, got people watching it, would never be watching them before because they talked about this.
Well, you mentioned it, it's clickbait, right? And so, how do you get publicity? And we've also talked about this in past episodes, Scott, which is, one of the things I used to do was just pull up a news network, whether it's Yahoo, Google Trends, whatever, and find out what's trending, like what's happening in the world, and then find a connection with whatever your message is, whatever your business is, and see how those two things connect together. And as you said, here's a big old slap, and you get the publicity, and you kind of like piggyback ride on what's happening in the world. And so, a title might be, what happens when you smack somebody in the face, right? So that would show up on some searches because that's a hot trend. And so the key, though, with everything, and I know we've mentioned this as well, Scott, is that consistency is going to be the key to success in any business, whether you're an author, whether you're a business owner, whether a network marketer, whatever it is. You got to be consistent. And so this is an exercise that you want to do and you want to practice on a weekly basis, if not more frequently. As a matter of fact, I was reading, and one of the guys I follow who's a business coach, and he says that if you're not getting enough exposure with your email list, and this is about email training, if you're not getting enough exposure with your emails, then you should send an email every single day, right? And then he was talking about some guys that were actually sending 2 to 3 emails every single day, and they get a 0% spam rate. Why? Because the content that they write is relevant to what's happening in the world and happening in their business, and they're providing value. And so if you can connect what's happening in the world to what's happening in your business and make that connection, then that's the key to success. And doing it on a regular basis is how you're going to get people reading what's going on a regular basis with what's happening with you and your business.
Yeah, and the more you practice it, the better you're going to be. That's the other thing, right? Is looking for these opportunities to get in there and be part of the conversation.
So here's an example with freeebooks.net, Scott, right? Is that with this slap heard around the world, up comes certain topics. One of them, which is violence is never something that we condone, right? Violence is never an answer, is a topic that pops up. And so with free ebooks, you can go in free ebooks and look for books on self-defense. You can look for books on anger management, anger control. You can look for books on what to do when you are a victim for certain things, how to handle that, like emotionally mindset. And so all those kind of books are on freeebooks.net, right, Scott? Or similar topics.
Yeah, that's correct. And then you can be going and getting your writers to write a book for children on why violence is not the answer.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact,
Nonviolent communication.
for my children's series books, we do have a book on bullying. And so bullying is a topic you can also look at on freeebooks.net. And I could use that as an example of, somebody bullying somebody and then connecting that and say, hey, if you want to teach your kids about bullying, go look up my book where bullying is bad for kids.
Right. I think that's so. How would you tie in the war in the Ukraine to your children's books?
So again, war in Ukraine is a topic that covers many different things. We can off the top, and you just stuck me on the spot here, like you always do.
I thought you might say, "Hey, it's a war. It's children shouldn't be exposed to war, so I'm not touching that one."
No, so yeah, I'm not touching that, Scott. Let's wait until the war is over. No, I'm just kidding. So war again, and I think I might have mentioned this last week or the week before. No, we didn't. Anyways, I've mentioned this before. Is that my wife and I went over to my in-laws' house a couple weeks ago, and this obviously was when the war had started. I guess the war is on our 5th week now, and so this was 2 or 3 weeks into the war, and we went over to my in-laws' house. And while we were there watching, the TV was on in the background while we were talking and catching up, and the news flash came up about the war in Ukraine. And it was interesting that my mother-in-law actually looked over to my wife and said, this reminds me back of the day when we had to leave Vietnam, because it was kind of the same situation where, we had to leave the country because of war, the Vietnam War. And this was back in the 70s. And, we were refugees. And at this point in time, I think the count now is that there are 4 million Ukrainian refugees. And so, it was interesting from a historical aspect of history repeating itself. And so with this, it's, how can I tie that into children's books is we can discuss war because wars happen across the world. We can discuss negotiations. We can discuss peace, how to conflict resolution. And so, if you're arguing with a kid in school, I could write a book about having a fight in school and how again, I can tie the Ukrainian war into now a children's book, which obviously a fight at the school playground is not the same as a war. At the same time, it's fighting, right? It's arguing, and how do you resolve conflict resolution? And so that's a key one way of doing that. And obviously, there's a whole bunch of other ways, such as survival techniques, survival strategies. If you're writing about survival techniques, how can you take what's going on in Ukraine and tie that into survival? First aid, health, mental wellness, right? There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of fear going on. And so if you have all these topics, you could write books about these, or if you have books about them, you can tie them right into what's happening with the Ukrainian war.
That's brilliant. And so thank you for sharing that. We've got this coming up, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit more. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss an exciting episode. I'm Scott Paton, he's Chaffee-Thanh Nguyen, and we're talking about author strategies. So what do you do when something takes over center stage in the world? Do you just talk about it with your friends, or do you use it as something to leverage the popularity or the exposure of your content?
Here's something interesting that's happening with this Ukrainian war, Scott, is that a lot of companies are actually halting their services in Russia, right? And on one side, I get why they're stopping services in the Russia. On the other side, you gotta figure, if they're halting their services in Russia, are they actually helping the Ukrainians, or are they hurting the Russian civilians who have nothing to do with this war, many of which are against it? And so, it's creating publicity for these companies that are, coming out and saying this. Only are they really doing the right thing? And a lot of times, be careful when you're making certain ties to your business or your company that you're doing it for the right reasons, not just to market and sell something. Because again, you could be sending the wrong message.
Very well said. In fact, I think our audience loves that.
See, you found the video clip. You found the right video clip this time, huh, Scott?
I did. So awesome. So basically, what would be the process that you would go through if you wanted to tie in one of your children's books with, let's just say, the Slap Around the World? I mean, and you kind of did talk a bit about it, but I want to get into, like, how would you figure out a headline, or would you do a video, or like, so let's just, if I'm an author, I've got a book on something, I want to, you're an author, you have a book, you've got a group of children's books. Would you go after like a meme? Would you go after a video? Like, what are some of the ways that you would try to tie in what you're doing with what's happening in the broader world of entertainment in this case?
Sure. So first and foremost, I'm a big believer of dovetailing, which is you create one thing, you do something once and you're able to use it multiple times. And so for me, the best thing or the easiest thing to do might be to actually write down an article or a blog post. And so first and foremost is that whatever your books are or whatever your topics are, you write down what those topics are, like, bullying, fighting, conflict resolution. So you write down potential subjects or subject titles or topics that can fit into your book. And then, as things are happening around the world, you'll see if there's a match, right? With Ukrainian war, there's a bunch of topics. With the Slap Around the World, there's a bunch of topics. And then you see if there's a match. And if there's a match, that's the connection that you can make. And so how do you start off with that? Now, for some people, writing an article might be difficult. I know we're talking about authors here, so hopefully sometimes authoring isn't difficult for you. And writing an article might be difficult. And so just recording yourself in a video like this or a Zoom is another way of doing it, and talking about that connection. So now that you have kind of what we call like a long form of something created, whether it's a video or an article, you can break those into little chunks and use them into multiple different places. And so if I have an article, let's just start with a video, since everyone's doing that. If you take a video, you can transcribe that, take the transcript, and then massage it into an article. Now you have a video and an article. That's two pieces of content that you can use. And then you break that article down into little chunks that you can use as posts. And so those posts can be tweets, and you can use those as tweets. You can use those as posts. You can take clips from the video, short clips, and then post that on Instagram or Snapchat. And so it really depends upon the medium of advertising or the medium of media that you're using to get all these pieces out there. Only if you start with something long form that's a good, few 5 minutes or so, now you can break them down into smaller chunks and use multiple pieces of content and multiple different avenues of publicity. And so that's how I would always start off with, is, like I said, either a video or an article that contains everything, and then chunk that down and use those little pieces in multiple different marketing avenues.
Terrific advice. So Chaffee, if some of the authors out there, or if you're in business and you want to get some coaching, which is what Chaffee does, how can people get a hold of you?
Hey, the easiest way is to first go to my website at www.keyconceptcoaching.com. And on my website, you can schedule a time with me or shoot me an email just at chaffee@keyconceptcoaching.com.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. Appreciate having you on, as always, Chaffee. Great insights. And
hey, Scott, before we go, obviously, I did a lot of talking today. You have to share some piece of advice or content or information with our audience here. So what's your tip of the day, Scott?
Well, oh, what's my tip of the day? And I don't have a tip of the day video to oh, maybe I do. Hang on. Let's pretend that said tip of the day instead of today's guest. What I would do is be aware, right? Look and see, what are people talking about? What are the headlines that are going out? What sort of videos are people putting up? I mean, there's a lot of people that's doing commentary on it. So, what are their headlines? What are they keying in on? And then on the back of your mind is, how can I tie this in with my romance novel or with my children's books or my sci-fi books or my business books or whatever? And then probably the next step, once you've done that, is find one or two people who you trust, contact them up and say, listen, this is what I've been thinking. This happened, that happened. I want to tie it in with this, that, and the other thing. And the reason isn't, for them to talk you out of it or anything like that. But when you start brainstorming and you mastermind with other people, you're going to get your ideas polished or your ideas improved. And I think that's really, really important, right? So nobody is, no man is an island sort of thing, although we try to be all the time. And I think one of the things that happens, particularly for authors, is we do it all ourselves. And really, a lot of the successful authors are involved in different groups where they can bounce ideas off. So don't just come up with something and say, I'm going to put this out. And then afterwards, you've got, you're canceled because you're in the cancel culture and you didn't think all the ramifications of what it was that you said. And then just see how you can just naturally, and of course you're going to have an opinion. So voice that opinion in no uncertain terms, because these sort of things are polarizing, right? There's people that says, yeah, he shouldn't have insulted the guy's wife and he deserves the slap. And there's others that say, well, there should never be any violence. And so, on and on you go. And so you just pick whatever side you believe in, or a compromise, and then push that out.
Awesome. Great piece of advice. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on that, Scott. And
are you saying that you're going to be doing what I suggested and that I threw this idea out? Now you're going to add to it and polish it?
Yes.
Awesome.
And I was going to say that, as you said, pay attention to what's going on out there. And if you see multiple people talking about a certain topic, then you can also take that same topic and massage it and make it your own. And so just because people are already talking about something doesn't mean you're too late to the game, shall we say.
That's right.
When you see stuff happening, that might be a clue to say, hey, I should put some piece of content out there related to this as well, unless it's like 3 weeks later and something else has happened. Only, right. Within a window of, a few days or so, you can go out there and just create something quick, create a quick post, create a quick meme, create, a quick 2-minute video, put it out there, and you too will be relevant, and people and get people to comment and talk about what you're putting out there as well.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Chaffee, for joining us today. Thank you to our audience for being with us. We love you. Head over to free-ebooks.net. Sign up if you're not already signed up, and start looking through our catalog. We've got tons and tons, over 40,000 books, 220,000 people visit us each week. We've got 5 million members. So there's lots of books there that people love. They keep coming back and reading them. And what we want to do is we really want to help authors create a community. If you're just starting out or you haven't had the success as an author that you would like to have, what's the problem? The problem is not enough people have read your book. And we have so many stories of people who podcasted their books and put their books on free ebooks and started to get the downloads. And once they saw this book, wow, what other books do they have? And they, in fact, we actually have an author, Chaffee, who has posted 35 of his books on our site.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. And the reason that I know is he emailed us and he said, I'm doing a book talking about violence in the Ukraine. It's on war and a little bit of history of war and his own take on that history. And I don't see any, violent category. So we made a category military so that we could have his book published there on the site.
Speaking of which, Scott, I think he would be a great guest to have on this podcast, by the way. And if there are authors out there that want to get on this podcast and have us talk to them, there's a way of doing that too. And they could just reach out to you, correct, Scott?
That's right. You go to free-ebooks.net/guest.
There you go. So if you'd like to be on this podcast and have us talk to you about your book or your topics, go to that link and submit the form, and Scott will reach out to you.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chaffee. I should have had that ready. But we just made this URL 2 days ago.
Oh, there you go.
free-ebooks.net/guest will take you to our Calendly. 5:30 Eastern on Wednesdays is when we go live, and it ends up on the front page of our site for a week or two. So lots of opportunity for exposure and to grow your audience, and that's what we're all about here. So thanks for that, Chaffee. Thanks for everything that you do. And everybody, we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.